So something I came across today, actually, just a little bit before starting to stream, for all these students out there. I'm not sure if you guys are following what's going on over there, but apparently Republicans are suing the Biden administration to pause all student loan forgiveness debt. Debt forgiveness. So yeah, they're fighting against it, and I'm kind of curious to see what kind of bullshit they're going to come up with to justify it, considering how much debt forgiveness has been given to corporations and all these other exploitive companies and that are basically setting back any sort of progress. But student debt, people who weren't able to actually go to classes, take advantage of what they paid for, what the astronomical amount that does put them into debt. That is going to be a problem. That's going to be problematic. So, of course, good Christian values there, right? Like exploitive companies that are creating more greed and damaging the economy with like all these big oil companies that are damaging the environment and causing all these natural disasters to exacerbate all that. Those are great. Again, going to like Christian values or whatever. But students who are putting in effort to make sure that the economy is going to be run well, to get jobs and get good paying jobs, not throw the economy into shambles even more, provide great service and create more interesting, innovative things, like that is terrible. That's against Christian values, quote unquote. And they're going to be using that as their shield for pretty much everything while completely contradicting it. And they absolutely need to be held accountable for that. Like, you can't go into court that depends on logic and reason to make arguments, to create laws, to create all these legislations, and have absolute disregard for the process by contradicting yourself, contradicting what you stand for nonstop, and not be held accountable for it. Absolutely have to be held accountable for it, and they should be in court. But yeah, I think that's ridiculous, and it's just blatant to see that party is just responsible for all form of regress, and a lot of the reasons why they want to do that, and I'm pretty sure it's because all these like loan companies are pissed because they can't rack in more profits from all of this stuff. Why shouldn't they be able to, considering students are in debt for college that wasn't in session? People weren't going to go into these classrooms for multiple reasons. Why should they be forgiven for that? They're taking out these loans to get an education, to use the facilities, to be able to deal with, like, interact with one another and have the full university experience that they didn't have during the pandemic. Like, why should they get forgiveness for that? That's not theft. We're not just stealing their money that they were supposed to use for the education and its facilities. No, our profits are way more important. It's just this ridiculous, deranged, like, that's what capitalism brings. It brings these like sociopathic behaviors and ideas out because people are just like, my profits, they're more important than anything. It's like, tomorrow everything can implode, but I have high profits. I beat this guy's profit levels, and I am considered to be the best. Just sick. These people are so sick. They're completely deranged. And they're still considered in court. They're still considered valid in court. It's ridiculous, man. And I don't have to deal with that. I'm not dealing with it. I just think that it's ridiculous that college students have to be put in debt for it. And they want you to be in debt, because when you are in debt, you're going to look for these exploitive jobs, basically, or jobs that need more drones to help them capitalize, to work for their companies that's going to give them opportunities to exploit more, whether it's the environment or other countries or people in this country, whatever it is. However they can do it to exploit people, they need more people working for them. So, if you're not in debt, then you're not going to care to work for their companies. Because those companies, those deranged sociopathic companies, are the ones that pay the most because they exploit the most. They exploit way more people, exploit all sorts of loopholes. They're obviously in the pockets of politicians, and that's what these politicians are doing. That's why they're creating these lawsuits to try and, for one, distract from all the other problems that they're creating, and two, for trying to meet or appease rather their campaign contributors and people basically give them all this money. Again, capitalism, right? It's like even in the legislative process, their corruption is taking precedence when it should be the complete opposite. That's the entire purpose of the legislative process, is to prevent things like that. This is why big money and corporations should have absolutely zero to do with politics or contributions or any of it. Like, it's already enough that they get our taxes. They shouldn't be getting any more contributions from it. And that's why people go into politics, because they know they can go and exploit this money. But if politics wasn't a place for all that, all this money and all that other stuff, less people would want to pursue it. Or less corruption, rather, would want to pursue it. I think people would be pursuing it for the sake of actually caring about making progressive moves. Whoops. Not the right face yet. Getting carried away with this rant. But yeah, this is just a summary, basically, of everything you're going to see on this face. What areas are going to capture the most light. You can see that most part of the forehead, I'm going to say like 3/4 part of the forehead is going to capture it. You're not going to see much shadows on the right side of the face where the light source is coming from. It's coming from here. And the rest of the face is going to be getting a lot more shadows. Because the right side is is protruding out and is casting a shadow over to the left. And just, going back to that rant, it's just a reminder for all of you out there, students, to register and vote these psychos out. Vote these greedy, deranged people out of office. We need people there who are going to make progressive legislations, not these fascist Nazi behaviors and legislations. And something I was mentioning before is a lot of them are trying to introduce corporal punishment, which is like beatings in schools, which is absolutely insane. We're getting more pedophiles in there and all these other crazy people who are going to get a kick out of abusing kids, developing traumas, developing aggression and anger and more youth. That's exactly what they want. They want to create as many problems as possible. Crazy people. But yeah, just a reminder, y'all. Register and vote them out. You see where things are heading when it comes to them. Imagine what it's going to be like if they control the Senate, which is really important, actually. If you think about it, the fact that the House of Representatives, the Senate, they're the ones who push legislations and laws and bills out to the president's desk. So he he's just waiting for things like that to process through from the House of Representatives and the Senate's. And then once that's approved, then it goes to him, and then he signs it into law. And, so it's not just presidency. I think for a really long time, people just neglected the importance, and we're seeing now with Manchin and all these other pawns, corporate and Republican pawns in the Democratic Party, who are stopping any progress. But it just shows that it's not about just the presidency. It really heavily depends on the Senate and the House of Representatives in order to get things passed on to the next stage. And you have to protest. You have to continuously do that, because as you could see, they're obstructing things as much as possible. So you have to protest in order to make it as difficult for them as possible. Not because you want to, but because you need these legislations to pass in your favor, as who they're supposed to be responsible for, which is the people. But they're not. They're only interested in corporations and campaign contributors and personal interests and big money. Like, that's what they represent. That's what they care about. They don't care about the people. They don't care about the economy. They don't care about anything other than money. That's basically what that party is. So, they'll fool you with these, like, we're Christian and we're religious people and so on and so forth, but they don't care about any of that. The only thing they care about is money and white supremacy, as you've seen. That's their only important values. So you want to make sure that you stay away, you register and you make sure that they're not elected, that they're in fact kicked out of the legislative process, as many of them as possible. And some people are saying, oh, it's just like a thing that happened from the past 6 years. And it's like, no. If you actually take the time, you'll see that that political party has been eroding progress. Like, all the things that we're talking about now is something that people talked about in the 70s, in the 80s. Like, you watch some of these movies and what they're talking about, like what the political affairs are. Sometimes you'll see snippets in movies where they talk about, like, the current economical affairs of that time period, and it's the same exact stories. This isn't the past 6 years. This isn't the past even 10 years. This has been going on for 20, 30, 40, 50, however long, basically. That party is just not fit to run the economy, obviously. All right, going back to the drawing, as I mentioned before, nothing is as white as the paper, on the face especially. It's a big mistake to leave out a lot of, like, white areas when you're dealing with the face. So I'm doing a light coat, a light shade over the face, because we're going to gradually build on top of that. I don't want to get too dark now. Making sure the eyes are leveled, they're on the same line. One isn't bigger than the other. I'm also keeping an eye out to the angle of certain features. So for example, the nose here, what at the outermost edge, I'm going to say, of all the shadow lines, or of all the shades, there's an outermost edge. Just paying attention to it in relation to the line going down the middle. Is it straight? Is that line straight? If you're working from a reference, is that line just as straight as the line that's going down the middle that's splitting all the features, or is it a little bit more towards one side or the other? So another perfect way to use this guide down the middle to help you make sure you get accurate lines down, because that is really transformative. Like if you don't get that line down, it could change the entire shape of the nose, and that's gonna lessen the likeness of whoever it is that you're drawing, as I mentioned, if this is a reference drawing. Time is flying, everybody. Seems like I just started the stream and it's already coming to an end. I have to get ready for the next stream, which is the project stream. It's something that I'm working from my imagination, getting further and further along in it. I do want to dedicate more time off stream to quicken the pace. And I just got other projects that are sucking up a lot of the time. I'm looking towards this weekend, maybe, depending on how much of these other projects I get done. I wanted to flesh out this this drawing more before the stream ends. It does take longer when you are doing so many layers, and that's just like part of doing realistic drawings, is you got to take time to recognize all the different areas that aren't smoothly transitioning from like highlights, midtones to shadows, and having to correct that while trying to capture the likeness as well. So there's a couple of things to do when it comes to this sort of work. But it's well worth it because, as I mentioned before, it really trains your ability to recognize detail. It trains your ability to gradually smoothen your transition from highlight, midtone to shadow. It's an excellent opportunity to practice all those things. So even though it is challenging, it's rewarding. It provides good lessons. And personally, I just like getting lost in that process, just shading things and studying these like minute differences to see if I can get more and more of the likeness down. All right, y'all. I'm gonna end the stream here for figure drawing basics. I will be back tomorrow for the last stream of the week to do more figure drawing. So make sure you tune back in then. And as always, if you guys enjoy the content, hit the like and subscribe button to get notification when I'm going live. That way you guys don't miss a stream. And I will see you in 5. Hello everyone. Welcome to our lounge alley. This is project part 52. And this is the project that I'm working on. It is moving along. I am in the next stage of inking, I want to say. As you guys can see, I've done parts of the right side, some parts towards the middle, and I'm gonna continue on. I'm still kind of working on the lines here, because I do like, for instance, the line variation that you see here on her leg, as opposed to just having one consistent line going through the entire figure. And what I mean is like the thin and thickness of the lines. Now that's something that's common in blind contour drawing. If you guys aren't familiar with that, what it is you basically cover your sketchbook or drawing pad, or whatever it is that you're using, and you try to draw what you're seeing without looking at the paper, without looking at the pencil, and just kind of having your mind's eye, like imagining in your mind what your hand is drawing, and just guiding yourself through it, through the drawing with this ability. It's an exercise to help you sync your hand-eye coordination. So whatever it is that you think, like what you're seeing on the figure, let's say it's a vase, you're drawing a vase, and you're drawing on a drawing pad, you're drawing parts of the vase, and you start with like the top rim. And as you're drawing the top rim, you're going around and you're trying to picture where you started to connect that rim into a full circle or circular drawing. So you're not looking at it, so you can't really tell if it's accurate, and you just kind of have to imagine and think about where you were coming from, what the direction was and where you think that's gonna be. And you just kind of slowly, I guess, sync your eye with your hand. So as you're seeing the part of the rim, you're going around and your eye is following it, and your hand is going at the same pace as your eye following that rim. And that is supposed to help you train your hand-eye coordination, literally. And also, as I mentioned, your mind's eye, syncing your mind's eye, which is helpful when you're, let's say, working from imagination, right? If let's say you're picturing a pose in your mind. So whatever it is that you're seeing, you want to be able to draw it on paper. So this blind contour drawing kind of tackles all those things at once. And it's very challenging because let's say you're pretty good at drawing and you decide to pursue doing a blind contour, you're going to get some horrible results in the beginning. It comes with practice. It comes with you having to draw that method over and over and over again until you get some really impressive results. Like, this is something I might have mentioned before on stream. There was somebody that I knew when I was younger who demonstrated this, like, live. I was there, I saw it happen. They covered their sketch pad completely, and they drew not a vase, not an inanimate object, the person's face. And they did it so well. Like, once they uncovered, it looked like it wasn't a blind contour drawing, it looked like a regular drawing. And they were able to even capture the likeness of that person doing a blind contour. So just to get an idea, guys, I encourage you guys to challenge yourself and try to do that. Look up what blind contour is, look up what the steps are if you guys aren't sure from the description. But as I mentioned, you cover up the sketch pad and you try to follow along with your eye as you draw whatever it is that you're drawing, whatever the subject is. So yeah, take your time to do that, and then imagine being able to capture the likeness, completing the drawing, making sure that it looks right, and connecting everything together using that method. It's very challenging. So the fact that I saw them do that, I was like, wow, you really they draw a lot. You know, this person drew a lot, and granted, they were older than me at the time, so they got more practice. But even still, it's not an age thing. It really is a matter of how much time you dedicate to drawing. But in blind contour drawing, you know, just bringing it back around to why I brought it up, there is line variation. That's one of the things that you do. So in places where, let's say you're studying parts of the vase and you're looking at the base and you notice that there's shadows at the base, and that's where you would press harder. You know, that's where you would, you know, also it trains your sensitivity. So you have to also think in terms of that, like, okay, well, this is over here, I'm seeing that there's dark shadows underneath that vase, so now I'm going to press harder and I'm going to try to make that line thicker. You know, so you start imagining and picturing like what your hand is doing right now on the paper, while also tracing the subject with your eyes, basically, and having your hand follow your eyes. Very challenging, very rewarding exercise, drawing exercise. And it's not something that you'll immediately, as I mentioned, you're not going to immediately grasp it. You're going to get some weird results where the lines are kind of everywhere. They're not connected, they're disconnected, in fact. But if you stick to it, just like anything else, you'll become as good as that person who was able to capture likeness, not even take a second to look at their drawing to see how it was turning out, and still managing to do all those things. So just gotta stick to it. It's absolutely, it does absolute wonders to your drawing skills. So highly, highly encourage you guys to do it. Yeah, so like part of me when I'm doing this drawing, I'm like, I kind of like the consistency in the line, you know, that it is kind of like this one thin line kind of, but then looking at these parts right here, you know, like this line right here for the leg, it looks cool. It looks really good. I really enjoy that. But I might do 2 passes. So right now I'm going to just flesh things out, really put in some time in inking, bringing everything together, and then do another pass of like, you know, bringing line variation and stuff to get the best of both, I guess, to see what the drawing is going to look like in that kind of style, and then do the second pass and see what it looks like in that other style I mentioned. Gonna skip this one, Pretzel. Thanks, but I'm gonna go with something else. think another thing to note when it comes to looking at other people's art, looking at other comics and stuff, is to pay attention to the composition of things. For example, like all these little details that I'm putting on, they do have a pattern or a purpose. It's not as easy there. It's not as random as people think. There is actual purpose in its placement in terms of how to fill up an image, how to bring things together, kind of. Yeah, as opposed to like ostracizing certain things and having way too much on one side and not enough on another, like all that. It really does play an important role. I'm going to see if I could bring up what I had before. Let's see. All right. There's that screenshot. So, and just as an example here, you guys see all these little, I'm going to say like that detail right there, right? I am learning from this amazing artist. If you guys aren't familiar with who this is Moebius. That's all you have to know. Look up Moebius, comic book artist, and you will see all of his amazing work, all the different type of imagery that he's created, panels that he's created. It's absolutely fantastic. You can also check out in the video section, if you go to the video section on the Twitch channel and you filter based on collections, you guys will see a folder called highlights, and in that folder I have a bunch of different special intros, and one of them is about Moebius. So you guys can also check that out. I show you pictures, a couple of images from a comic book, and talk about all that as well, giving you guys some examples, focusing on certain parts of the page and discussing that. But yeah, also just check it out at your own pace. Buy his books. If you're pursuing the comics, if you love comics, you absolutely should add Moebius to your collection. His work it's literally fantastic. Like his creativity, how he comes up with animals and faces, and especially scenes. Like just looking at this, how he creates them, they're fantastical. The buildings, it's great work. Like looking at that, it's beautiful. All the little details, like look at the windows, look at all that grime or texture on there. Same thing here, like all that has composition. This notice how there's this part, and then there's just like a couple of things that bring them together. There's a little bit of empty space there, but it makes sense in terms of, let's say, lighting. If the light source is coming from this direction, sure, this place won't have that much light on there, but these other areas are kind of in the shadow, especially this area as well. But I was just to point out how these little details do have purpose, like all this as well, all this little detail that also has its purpose. Having to have these little areas that tend to be a little bit darker than, let's say, the rest of the image. It's important. It fills up and kind of like thickens the scene, as opposed to having them all be exactly the same all around. So a lot of interesting combination there. And yeah, I'm trying to incorporate that a little bit into the drawing as well. I want to be able to add more texture, add more grit to the drawing. Because it is that kind of scene, you know, the environment suggests that. The state that people are in, you know, all that just kind of says, oh, you know, disheveled, unkempt environment. Gonna do some work on Porky's storefront. I actually recently just put it on the background because I saw it. It was like it was in movies recently added or something, and I was like, all right, why not? It's awful. It's really stupid. But yeah, it's a really old school 80s movie about like college students basically, and kids growing up and doing a bunch of really dumb stuff. And there's like 3 of them. Three movies, that is. It's like 1, 2, Porky's 1, 2, and 3. I think that the one that I put on was 3, but they're all just as bad. It's of that era, you know, so some of the things they say, you're just like, oof, that's awful. Come on. I don't remember what the problem is. It's not being zoomed in. See how that turned out. I can do better. Gonna do some work on this. Get some sign. Get some grease. This kind of reminds me of this band called Lard. Some of you might be familiar with it. For those of you who are new, it's a band with Jello Biafra. He is in a Dead Kennedys, if you guys ever heard of him. I'm sure a lot of you have. But if not, it's a punk rock band. Very politically driven, philosophically driven. It's a great band. If you take the time to listen to the lyrics, if you read it, what he talks about. And again, this is like 80s, 90s. It talks about a lot of the same issues that are happening. And of course, created by Republicans. Same issues, same people creating those issues. But yeah, it's a band and it's called Lard. I skipped this one. And they talk about all this different political stuff and philosophical stuff. So check that out. Come and get some grease. It's only $20. Let's draw this $20 grease right here. draw this like grease dripping down from what look like pork rings, I'm gonna say. Some grease marks. Bucket of grease. Only $20. Pay us to put you in terrible state. Talking about Mobius, actually, just reminds me of this video that I saw of him. It was an interview. I was talking about his comics, particularly Blackberry. That's like one of his Western comics that he created. I think it was like his first few. Or really like where he started, but I could be wrong. Anyways, that video is, that interview is great because it also shows a quick demonstration of him doing some illustration. So you get to see what that process is like. And it's also traditional. So I believe he was like using markers for color, which is something I haven't explored. I haven't tried Copex yet. And they're supposed to be pretty good. And like they're like the industry leading markers for coloring comics traditionally. Trying to find some good tracks here from Pretzel. Also took some time to do a little bit of correction for all the various glasses. If you guys haven't noticed, each person is kind of wearing a different design. And that's kind of like the appeal. You know, it's similar to phones, right? It's like you'll have the same exact functionality and capability, but this design is different from this one. And people will spend like hundreds and thousands now for phones because of these slight differences, and it's just I think it's a waste of resources, really. There's some things where variety is really important. And for one of them, I'm going to say absolutely important is when it comes to things like, for instance, social media. You know, we have like these monopolies, basically, where the social media is owned by one big company, which is a problem because if things go south with that company, this is something that I mention frequently. If that company decides to one day back fascism, you know, or back these like crazy politicians who are trying to bring back corporal punishment, or being against student loan forgiveness in the middle of a pandemic, something that they also created with their greed and disastrous oil drilling. It causes a lot of ecological problems, not to mention economical problems. You know, if all these companies, these big giant companies, are going to start backing up these type of endeavors, what options do people have? You know, and that's where I believe variety is very important. I don't agree when it comes to monopolies when dealing with that. But just buying all these products that have very similar functions, just slight differences for the sake of just having capitalistic competition, that's also disastrous. That also creates um, environmental disasters, because those phones aren't even designed to stay uh, in top performance for years. They're designed to expire, which means all that is going to go to landfills. So think about how many people are buying these, like billions of people right nowadays. There's hardly anybody who doesn't have a cell phone. And then billions of those products go to the waste or landfills or whatever else. Like, huge waste of money, huge waste of resources. And it's not sustainable. Remember to vote, everybody. Register to vote.